All right, it's the Piergrossi podcast with son Giovanni Piergrossi back again, fourth time, and there could be many more. We got a lot of exciting things to talk about. I think the focus today is issues that young men are grappling with, right, Gio?
Yeah, young men, and then also just like the younger generation in general. But yeah, mostly young men.
And Gio made a full list of topics to cover. I don't know if we'll get to them all in this episode, but we'll cover some different topics, and then whatever we don't get to, we'll get to in future episodes, and the list is growing. So, what are some of the things at the top of your list that you're finding that young men and young people in general are being challenged by right now?
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to bring up is basically why men are lonelier than ever before.
Hmm.
I remember there was this article that came out, I think it was towards the end of last year, and it was, young men are lonelier and they're, more single than ever before. Higher rates of depression, all these different things.
And
Um,
less sexually active than ever before.
well, yeah, I mean, obviously you have this whole group of men who are incels. You have the incel community, which is honestly pretty big now. It's probably the biggest it's ever been. They have whole like YouTube channels dedicated to incels and their ideologies. Um, so yeah, I think we should dive into that because that's something that's pretty interesting, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at, and some solutions need to be laid out.
Hmm. Okay, so what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of issues, relating to young men, especially in the fact that they're isolated, they feel lonely, and I think there's a couple reasons why. One of the reasons I think is, especially in the younger generation, right? A lot of men are socially awkward. A lot of men, they spend a lot of time playing video games. They spend a lot of time, and then, we talked about this before in past podcasts, but the whole pornography addiction is really bad. And it's not even the fact that whether you want to label it an addiction or not, right? When men, their first sexual experience is something on a screen, it's something that's fake. You have these OnlyFans, these a lot of these women are doing OnlyFans. There's these cam models. There's all these basically simulated fake relationships that men can have that isn't realistic. It's not real. And what's happening is that men are having, their first sexual experiences, or maybe even their first romantic experiences, are not real. They're something that's with, either they're paying for it or it's something online, it's pornography, whatever the case is. They end up, their brain starts to associate their natural desire to have relationships and sexual relations, that starts to be connected to a screen, right? And because of that, a lot of the younger generation, a lot of younger men fail to actually learn to, how to form real relationships, and how to become attractive to women, and how to learn how to socialize, learn how to be a man who's attractive. Because another aspect of that too, right, is when you replace your drive to succeed in the real world with playing video games, right? When you replace your desire to accomplish career goals with, let me accomplish goals in this video game, then your whole life becomes a virtual matrix, right? Not only the aspect of trying to achieve things in your life, which, gets replaced with video games, but then the aspect of having relationships, intimacy with real women gets replaced with these online, pornography and these OnlyFans girls, or whatever the case is, even just social media, just looking at women on social media, right? And
Okay,
so,
so I think that the degree of difficulty with a real woman is much higher than uh, a girl on the screen. And same thing with like real life, like being successful in, the human existence on planet Earth is much more difficult than the video game, and the consequences are much more severe. There's no
Yeah.
um, real consequences for the video game, but they feel much more severe um, in this life. So also with that said, there's a higher degree of reward, right? Way higher. There's a way higher degree of reward being with a real woman than being with some uh, I don't even know what you call it, like a porn video or some, what do you call those? Like those digital, those like digital women, AI, some kind of AI woman or something. Um,
Yeah. Or the
so
OnlyFans models.
to me, it relates to something else we talked about. There's a couple other things I want to get into too, but to me, it relates to this other thing we talked about where part of being a man is to big part is to embrace challenge, to embrace adversity, and to learn to grow through embracing the challenge and embracing the adversity. And the more that you can do that, the more it's like these initiations. You step into the fullness, the more full, activated, actualized, realized version of your manhood. Um, but you don't do that from taking the easy route, taking the comfortable route. You don't do that by sitting in your basement looking at a screen all day, and watching porn and playing video games. You do that by facing the challenges that life provides for you to step into the fullness of the life that you're fully worthy of, uh,
Mhm.
just by saying yes to the invitation.
Right. Yeah, and I think also, I think that, of course, that aspect is really important in terms of being a man and masculinity, and taking on that challenge, because I think from an evolutionary perspective and from a biological perspective, usually the man has to do work to get the women. It's not the other way around. For thousands of years, and many of different other species. If you look at bucks, for example, right? Like in terms of like male deer, right? The bucks will headbutt each other basically, like to the death, to fight for the female. Or if you look at chimps, which are like primates that are very closely related to us, they'll compete for status to have access to females, right? So this isn't something that's like new. Like this is something that's like been it's ingrained in our nature as animals, but also as human beings, right? um there is a competition for women, and there is work that has to be done. And I think nowadays it's even harder for men, because there's this draw for that easy, quick, dopamine stimulation, where it's like you can go online and you go on like a porn site or something, and there's thousands, basically there's hundreds of like women right in front of you, and your brain just goes, just all this dopamine shoots off. And that's why it's so addictive, because we're hardwired, it's overstimulating to be exposed to that much sexual stimulation. Like that's not natural. If you go back thousands of years, it would be so hard to like, the only women you would know would be like the two or three in your tribe or something, right? But nowadays you go online, and it's like there's thousands. You just go online, there's thousands of women who are showing themselves off, showing off their body and stuff like that. And it's just it's a lot of sexual stimulation. And the thing is, it's so easy to get pulled into that, as that being the quick solution, the quick route, versus actually putting yourself out there, maybe facing the possibility of rejection, maybe facing the possibility of a girl not liking you. Like that's scary, right? It's very scary to face, to put yourself out there and face the possibility of getting rejected, right? But you have to go through that as a man. That like you said, that's the initiation. That the man has to have the ability to take on adversity, and that is the possibility of getting rejected. That is the possibility of failure. That is the possibility of not succeeding in something, right? But the more risk you take on, the more of the challenges you take on, the more you'll succeed. But you have to have that discipline, I think, especially in the modern day, to actually realize like what is the virtual matrix, the quick dopamine, and what is the actual goals that are worth pursuing. Because you want to have a life. If you want to have a life that's fulfilling, it's not going to be done through living in a fake world. It's not going to be done through video games, pornography, following OnlyFans girls. It's going to be done through actually going out and facing those scary things that are in the real world, and actually achieving real life goals, which is being successful in your career, having real relationships, real experiences with women, right? And taking on those challenges, and not taking, because nowadays there's I would call them modern day vices, right? That's what we talked about in the last podcast. But I think things like pornography, things like playing video games 10 hours a day, staying on social media, scrolling through, these are vices that I think men should be aware of, and realize that those will actually inhibit them from having a fulfilling life that's in reality, right?
Well,
um
I think there's so many more aspects to a relationship with a human woman that are more fulfilling, way more than, I mean, with pornography, you may get the need met for sexual stimulation. But with an actual human woman, the conversation, the intimacy, the reflections, the gifts that she has to provide to you, to give to you. The feminine has gifts and ways of illuminating and awakening the masculine, and vice versa, in the depth of relationship together, in a marriage together. And then if you're raising a family together, um, there's so many levels of uh, deep aspects of yourself that are met, that are opened, things you can't even like imagine or um, know about until you step into it, that you're never going to get, you know, jerking off watching porn in your basement, right? Like that's gonna that can meet a certain need, obviously, but that's a very narrow component of what a relationship with a woman brings you. There's so much more magic, miraculousness, mystical components in a relationship, that in the fulfillment, in the learning, in the growth, and the evolution, and the awakening spiritually to who you really are and why you're really here in the world, and stepping into your divine purpose, that the relationship with the woman will bring out in you and evoke in you. And so yeah, there's not really much of a comparison. It's not like it's like close.
yeah, no, it's not close at all. And in fact, like, I think another thing too is, even in the future, because we don't know where the future can go. But let's say like AI girlfriends and all this stuff, virtual reality girlfriend or whatever. Like, even my worry with stuff like that is like, it's not like you're not getting, like, what you get in a real relationship is you get intimacy, right? And despite the fact that people like to think that intimacy is only a thing that women want, or men just care about sex and all that stuff, it's not true. Like, men get very lonely, and men do crave intimacy. They do crave romance and things like that, right? So if a man's not getting intimacy, if he's not having an actual relationship with a woman, that can be very damaging. It can lead to depression. It can lead to, you know, suicidal ideation, things like that. And that's why I think that there's a huge mental health crisis too, because if men aren't in relationships, if they're not, having real connections with women, then, there's like, they're going to be searching other places for that where it's going to be unhealthy, right? That's why a lot of these OnlyFans women, there's, if you look at these women who are on OnlyFans, they have subscriptions. So like, you can subscribe to them. And then like, if you look at like kind of like their selling point, it's like, oh, well, you get free FaceTimes with me, you get texting with me, you get, so like, literally men are paying these women to actually get attention from a woman. Like, they're paying women to get attention from them, right? And this goes to show you, like, men have a need. Like, there's a desperate need for a lot of men to have an actual relationship, to have a woman that's actually interested in them and talking to them, right? and to the point where men are literally paying women a monthly subscription to have that type of connection, right? And you could say, you know, that's sad or whatever, but it is what it is, right? And it's a huge thing, and I think a lot of it can can um, can be brought back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Which is, you know, the social awkwardness, the pornography, the video games, the living in this virtual matrix, and then the other aspect too, besides just the intimacy, right? Because obviously that's something that you get for a real relationship. But I think there is so much, like for me personally, right? I have learned so much about women, like just from actually dating them, from being in relationships with women. I've learned so much about, you know, what needs, you know, women have, you know, like how to carry yourself in a healthy relationship, you know, how you should go about becoming an attractive man, like what it means to be an attractive man, because a lot of men don't know how to be attractive to women. A lot of men don't know how to what to do on a
Do
date.
you think that
Or,
they care about being an attractive man?
well, I think like we were saying, like they're so caught up in this virtual reality, or they're so caught up in, you know, their social awkwardness, that it's not even a focus for them. Like if they pulled themselves outside of that, then they would actually be forced to think like, okay, maybe I should be caring about this now because I'm dealing with women in real life, right? But it's
Mhm.
like now there's so many men that are so caught up in this getting this quick dopamine hit from a fake virtual matrix that yeah, it's not even something that they're probably focusing on at all, because you have to actually want to be with a real woman. You have to actually prioritize, and it has to be a big priority, because again, like not every woman's going to be into you. Like you're going to have, you know, I would say more than a few women who probably, you know, maybe they, you know, you're going to ask out some women and maybe they'll have a boyfriend, or maybe, you know, they have a different type, or maybe they're not ready for a relationship at that point.
Or maybe
And
they
then
don't like you.
yeah, they're not, like maybe they don't like you, so you have
Maybe they
to.
don't like you because you need to get better.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is that basically, like if you don't have a strong enough drive, there could be one woman who will reject you, and then you're going to be like, oh, I'm done. And that's what a lot of these incels are. Like they go on a dating app, right, and they have a few women who don't swipe on them or don't respond back to them, and then they're like, oh, I'm undesirable, I'm unattractive, which is not the case. I mean, that's just part of being a man, is that you have to find a woman who's also interested in you. And you have to also, on top of that, as you were saying, you have to become an attractive man. If you're not an attractive man and you don't know how to handle rejection, then it's impossible to date, because those are literally the two main aspects of dating, is being an attractive man, which is the most important thing, because if you're not an attractive man, then no woman's going to be interested in you,
Well,
right? So you have to be,
we should define what is attractive.
yeah.
So there's multiple qualities
Well, we'll
of
get
what is
into that, because
attractive.
I do want to talk about that. But mainly what I want to say is that for a lot of men, right, they're not even focused on doing that, because they go online and, you know, either they're in this virtual matrix, or they get rejected by like one woman and then they think the world is over, right? Because this one woman is not interested in them or whatever. But really it's what it is it's telling them something. And what's telling them is, you know, I need to do something to make sure I am more attractive to women, right? I need to become a more, whether that's, you know, losing weight, whether that's, you know, being more focused on their purpose, right? You know, becoming a man who is more focused on his mission, whether that's, you know, having better hygiene, you know, and improving your appearance, whatever the case is, right? Whatever these things are, becoming more charismatic, learning how to socialize, whatever the case is, you all these experiences are learning points, and it's learning points on how to build yourself and your character so you can become more attractive to women, and so you can become a man who's capable of bringing you know, being attractive to the woman that ideally you would want to be with, right? And I think a lot of men, instead of having that mindset when they go into dating, they have a mindset of, you know, I'm if one woman rejects me, that says something about me. That says something about I'm undesirable, I'm unattractive. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go online. I'm going to go with these other men who are, saying that they hate women and that they, this it's all this negativity, right? They go in these online spheres, these like these online, and they take on these like really toxic ideologies about, you know, women are like evil, and it's the same thing. We see this with women too, right? Like a lot of times women, they might have a lot of bad experiences with men, and then they turn into like one of those toxic feminists, right? Where they're like, all men are bad and the patriarchy and all these different things, right? And I think the opposite is happening with men now too, where there's a lot of men and they might have some bad experiences, which might actually be their fault. It might be something that they're doing to themselves. But
It's
regardless,
this is the
instead of
this is
taking,
the key point, right? It's like you got to take responsibility for your life. It's the only way forward. It's like the only path to make transformation, to make a change. Because if it's not your responsibility, then you're screwed, right? Then it's just externally, and then you're mad at all these other people and your mother and your father and the ex-girlfriend and whoever, the neighbor. There's the president of the United States. It's like there's always people to be angry at and mad at, and everything is their fault. But especially as a man, like you got to take responsibility for your life, 100% responsibility, 100% responsibility for your thoughts, 100 responsibility for your feelings, for your emotions, for your physical body, for your circumstances, for your situation, for your past and for your future. And when you can take that 100% responsibility, things start to shift in a really powerful way. And let's just touch on this other component because I think it's very important about competition, right? So to really embrace competition in a healthy way, I think is very important. So um, the way to get better is actually through competition. So if you see a man that's like your age and he's more physically fit than you, instead of being jealous by him, be inspired. That inspires you to get better. You know, if he's living a lifestyle that's very free and on purpose and fulfilling for him and you're not, then be instead of being jealous, be inspired, and that inspires you to live that life yourself. If you see a man that's more well read, more well versed, more knowledgeable, more cultured, more spiritually attuned, um, whatever it is, like instead of being jealous, be inspired to become a better man. And through that healthy level of competition between men, we're all inspiring each other to become better men. And then through inspiring each other to become better men, we're becoming better for women. And what do women want? Women will be happy that there's better men happening.
yeah,
So I think competition gets a bad rap, you know, where it's actually a very healthy component that God intelligently designed in us to become better and become better through seeing each other's reflections and by noticing ways that we can improve and continue to improve in ourselves. I think a great question is, are you giving everything you have to be the best version of yourself today? you know, and to be able to basically live in that question, live inside that question.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. And one thing I would say, well, to your first point, about the taking personal responsibility, I think that relates back to stoicism, right? Because I'm sure like I was really big into stoicism, and I still am very big into stoicism. I love Marcus Aurelius. I love the philosophy of the ancient Greeks. But I think stoicism is really important for a lot of men, and it's important for them to take on that philosophy, because I think the reason why a lot of men don't take personal accountability is because they lack a stoic mindset. They basically, instead of focusing on the things they do have control over, they constantly, like just complain about everything they don't have control over. Oh, I wish I had, this type of jawline, or I wish I had, I wish I was 6'3", or I wish I had, I was born in a different country, or I was, like it's always the things, like if you look at what these incels focus on, it's always the things that they can't change. It's never the things that they can change. It's never like, oh, like I should go to the gym and, work on myself and
And
become more
that's why I said
fit.
the best version of yourself, right? That's the key component, the best version of yourself, not the best version of someone else that you're seeing or someone else. They can give you a reflection of where you can go in yourself, but you're not trying to be somebody else. It's the best version of yourself, the authentic, unique essence of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important because again, and I think again, we can dive more into this, but I think social media has had a large impact, not just on the social or the mental health of men, but also women as well. But I think there is a lot of comparison that is not, because like you said, competition, which is a different word, right? But I think what there is a lot of comparison, right? And there's always that saying of comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I think a lot of men, they go on social media, they see these like good looking guys who are really successful, who have all these women and have all this attention. And then they're like, oh, wow, look at this guy. Like, I'm basically worthless. Like, I have like, no followers. I have no women in my life. I have no,
Yeah, but see,
you know,
this is the thing. I have no followers, that guy. So get more followers. Like whatever. There's 2 points here. Like whatever someone's doing, and you're not doing it, then and you want to do it, do it. Take the responsibility and do it, and be on that path. That's the first thing. But the second thing is really important, and I think people are starting to realize this more and more. Social media is not real. I mean, it's kind of like reality TV. It's not a real thing. Like you're watching basically like someone's like TV show,
yeah.
and the character that they're playing are
Mhm.
themselves. So it's fine. It's like I think of it kind of like it's like someone's artistic expression. Um, so you just have to keep that in mind that like, you're seeing a moment that they carefully crafted for you to see, and you're not seeing all the rest of the moments in their day, as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a facade, and like another thing too is like that can be applied to real life as well, right? Because you see a lot of people in like relationships and they seem like, oh wow, those people seem so happy in that relationship, like you might see it on social media or something, right? But really they might be extremely unhappy. Like you have no idea how they are, it's like that thing when you like go in the elevator and somebody's like how you doing, man? And you're just like great, but like you're just saying that because you want to be nice, not because you're actually having a good day, right? So like, yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of people on social media where they portray that they have this great life, they're traveling the world, they're super happy, right? But that might not be reality. They might actually be miserable and you have no idea. So I completely agree with that. And then the other element too, I think, yeah, like I think there is an element of like, okay, you see this other guy and like you should just think, okay, I can achieve that and I can head towards that. But I also think too, like, I don't think you should be like, I think there's two like versions of competition, or you could even say comparison, but let's just look at competition, right? I think there's two versions, right? There's an unhealthy version, which is more of like I'm comparing myself and I'm not going to do anything about it and I'm just going to make myself feel shitty, right? And then there's the other aspect where it's like a motivational thing, where it's like this guy is like successful and I want to have like let's say you see a guy, right? And he's in like a really healthy relationship, he has like a beautiful family.
And then you're like, I want that.
Yeah, and he's very, financially successful. He's very fit,
Yeah.
whatever, right? And then you make him as like a role model for yourself. You're
Yeah.
like you actually see him as like an inspiration,
Yeah.
and not in the sense of
And
like I can't
role
achieve that and
role
I'll never
models are
get there.
important.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like there's a lot of different role models that exist, right? There's a lot of like, and that's another thing too. Like, you want to make sure that you're choosing somebody who actually is, a healthy example, a healthy role model, and one of the things I think that's a problem with younger men, especially, is a lot of, and I'm sure we talked about this before, but there isn't really a lot of like, I think personally, there isn't like a lot of men are kind of at a loss for who they should be, especially in the modern day, right? Because there's all these like feminists saying like, masculinity is bad and like it's inherently part of the patriarchy and all this stuff. And then society, like, women still want like, in terms of like romantically and relationship wise, a lot of women still want like a masculine man. So then you have like these like competing ideas, and then you have people like Andrew Tate who are saying like, you gotta like make like a shit ton of money and like, get like a Lamborghini and um, get jacked and all this stuff.
Okay,
And then
listen, a couple things. So
okay.
one, I think is the interesting thing about you see a person who is like the archetype of what you want to be. Let's use the example you said of like great relationship, great family, you want that. So I think the key question is, do you feel you can have it or do you feel you can't have it? Because if you feel like you can't have it for whatever your story is, or the program you're running, the conditioning you're running, that you can't have it, then you feel all this kind of rage and resentment towards yourself and towards other people, and you're depressed or whatever the different ways it manifests, right? But it manifests in some kind of blocked energy and negativity, um, that arises, and people can be stuck in this their whole life, right? Or do you see it and think, I want that and I can have it, And if you feel like you can have it, then that's where the inspiration comes. So that's where, like, when I work with people, like one of the foundational components is like, can we get into a consciousness where anything is possible for me? Can I get into a space where anything is possible without limitation? And if I can get into that consciousness, it's almost like the consciousness of when you were a child, when you were small, like 4 years old, something like that.
Mm.
And kids are talking about, well, let's fly in outer space and let's build castles and let's all kinds of different, like, fantastic experiences that they have when they play together. And we have to like be able to maintain, or if we've lost it, reacquaint ourselves, reconnect to this essence of being able to live from the field of infinite possibility, of whatever's possible for somebody else is possible for me, but not in the way that they're doing it, in the way that is for me, the unique way that it's meant for me to live it, for me to do it, for me to express it. And that kind of ties into the second point, right? When you're talking about women's ideas and all these things, like the most important thing is like it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or says. Like um especially out on online or on the internet or in the media, like the most essential thing is like that question of like, how do I step into the most highest actualized version of myself, the unique expression of myself? And how do I step into that every day? And if you can do that, and you remember, I would say, a lot of people say, you actually maybe, because what you can step into is sort of unending. Like there is no limit to your potential, right? So it's sort of like you never actually fully get there because there is no limit. But the fact that you're on that path and you're dedicated to that path, that's what women will find attractive. The right women, the wrong women will be repelled, which is good. But the
Mm.
right women will be attracted. The right friends will be attracted. The right circumstances, the right situations, the right work, the right place to live, all will be attracted to come into being with that, you know. But if you don't have that, then it doesn't, right? So it comes back to that internal sense of like coming from within and really being dedicated. And I think it's like a spiritual impulse, G, because like, what is the reason to want to be the highest? Because it's like the reason is, I think ultimately it's a spiritual one. It's like God put you here to be the fullest expression of yourself. So
Mhm.
live that, be that, express that every day, and like be the vessel for God's love to flow through you in the unique expression of who you are every day. And then that love will be reflected back to you. It has to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of men, like again, I think a lot of men, and I agree completely with what you're saying. I think there's a calling, and I think it's a biological thing too. I think there's a drive that men can either harness or they can ignore, and there's a drive, to be the best. There's a drive to be, they always use the term like alpha male. I don't really like use that term, but I think it does relate to something that's tangible. I think there is this drive, that men can, a lot of men kind of they either ignore or they follow it, and like there's this drive to be the best man. There's this drive to, be the most fit, the most financially successful, the most influential, to have the biggest impact, right? And I think it doesn't like it can come from an unhealthy place where it's like I want to gain power and I want to gain control over other people, or it can come from a place of I want to be like a leader and an influencer and change the world and make it better. And I think there are men who have, taken that second option, and they naturally become attractive by doing that. When you become a man who is able to, help other men and other women too, right? But when you become a man who's able to help other people and you become somebody who's influencing the world in a better way, and you're being a leader in that sense, and you're doing that because you've become the best version of yourself. So now you're teaching other people how to do that and other people how to transform, then you become attractive by default just because of the simple fact that you
Exactly.
are you are the best version of yourself, but you're also changing the world in a sense. And you know women are going to see that and be like, wow, look at this guy, like he has this big impact, he's making all these changes in the world, he's doing all these different things. um but on top of that too, I think that when men become the best version of themselves and they're helping other people, it also leads to the most personal fulfillment. It also leads to the most, like you don't have a sense of insecurity, or a lot of what these incel guys have. Like you don't have that anymore because you're doing something purposeful. You're doing something that's contributing to the well-being of other people,
Hmm.
and additionally, you've become the most fulfilled in your own life, right? You've achieved the greatest potential that you can within your own life. And simply by doing that, it's not you're not focused on other people anymore. You're focused on yourself. You're focused on the impact you have, right? So I think one of the problems with a lot of these guys is they don't necessarily have a purpose or a mission that they're focused on. They don't have um they don't see the benefit in helping other people or having an impact on the world. And so because of that, that lack of purpose and that lack of direction in their life gets channeled into into this aggression, into this hatred for the world, into this, the women are terrible, and I'm alone, and I'm not 6'3", and all these different things. I mean, you could focus on a million different things, you know, but the main thing is like if you don't have something that you're doing, and I know this from my own life too, right? When I started, on TikTok and I started making videos, and I would see, other men, and women too, right? And I'd see them comment on my TikToks and like, wow, I really love this, or has a profound impact on my life. Like I gained more happiness from that than I did really anything else. The only thing I probably gained more happiness than that was like, or maybe the equal amount of happiness is like spending time with family and like, doing things like that. That's really, fulfilling. But, that was like that was like peak points of like, happiness when I can see that I've made impact on other people's lives. And that was a positive impact. And that like actually made changes in their lives. Right. And I think a lot of men, they lack direction because they don't have a purpose, they don't have a mission, they don't have something that, they don't have a goal of wanting to impact the world. And so it's easy to get carried away and, oh, I wish I had this, I wish I had that, or this, that, and the third, because they don't have a direction. They don't have a purpose. So they have to find a way to blame the world or blame these other things for not living the life that they should live. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think we solved that one.
Yeah.
So what's next on the list?
Well, I wanted to talk about kind of the deeper reasons for this is a more in-depth topic, but kind of the deeper reasons for why dating is like pretty screwed up, like especially for my generation, for Gen Z, and I'm assuming probably going to be even worse for younger generations. But I kind of want to dive into that a little bit.
Okay. Why is dating worse for Gen Z?
Yeah, so I think it can be attributed to a couple different things. But first, I want to kind of point at one thing that we kind of outlined in the last podcast, which was we talked about how capitalism has kind of infiltrated society in a sense that a lot of what they're focused on is profit, right? And that's at the expense of the consumer, right? But one thing that I think a lot of people don't really a lot of people aren't aware of, and this is something that's actually really
Can
uh,
I just say one thing about that? I think it's really interesting, actually. Something's come in my consciousness. So they're focused at profit at the expense of the consumer, right? But the
yeah.
consumer is giving them their profits, right? So it's interesting because it's like the consumer, like you think in a free market capitalism, if somebody wasn't providing good products, you wouldn't be giving them their money, and then they would go out of business, right? So I think that where we talked about last time, I think where I see what the problem I have is not with people wanting to make money off of their products, but I think it's the level of deception and dishonesty, right? In the manipulation, and people fall for it's almost like mind control. You know, multinational corporations use this, obviously intelligence agencies use this stuff, and people fall for it.
Mm.
And then they're maximizing profits by lying to people, deceiving people, tricking people, and then at the same time, people are thinking like, "Oh, I don't have any other options. This is my only option." And so that's interesting, right? It's interesting that like it's really about honesty, integrity, and honesty, and sharing the truth. And then if you can be a business or you can be a company, you're interested in stepping into business. I have my own business, the way I work with people and support people, and I think the number one thing that people really appreciate is if they feel if they feel like you're honest with them and there's integrity and they can trust you,
Mm.
So I think building that between people is and between business, the consumer and the business, whether it's a service or a product, that's the thing we want to clear up and clean up.
Yeah, and listen, I worked in the corporate world, so I know exactly how it is. I know that there is manipulation. I mean, that's basically what, like I do think there is a place for sales, but like sales in itself is like basically manipulating the customer to buy something that may, not be as good of a product as, it actually is, right? It's like you
Yeah.
have to get this person to believe through some sort of verbal manipulation that like this product is good instead of the product itself being the selling point, right? If the
Yeah.
product was actually good enough, there wouldn't need to be a need for selling it or
Well, it's interesting because like it's like if I have so in my case, like I have something that I know, I have multiple things that I know will absolutely transform people's lives and like, just up level them in like so many different variety of ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, in their work and their relationships, um, financially and fundamentally spiritually, right? Which awakens all these other components in their lives. So if you know that you have something and you're really excited about it and you know the benefits of it, then there's just this natural impulse to tell people about it, to share about it and to let people know that it's available, that it's possible, that all they have to do is say yes to it and it's theirs, and let them know what the reciprocity of exchange is to step into it. And so that I think is like the healthy version of sales or marketing or promotion. It's just like a higher level of communication, but you're dedicated to communicating in an honest way, in a way of integrity, in a way that is truly of service. When people say, what is your service? It is truly to serve others, to truly to be of benefit to others. And again, I think it comes from a spiritual foundation. It has to come from a spiritual foundation. So that's very different than this other thing. Uh-oh, I gotta charge my computer here. That's very different than this other component.
Mhm.
Keep going. Just gotta plug it in.
Yeah. So let's get back to what we're saying. So basically, last time we were talking about that, about how the corporations kind of profit off of people at the expense of the
Yeah,
people. Um, Now, one thing I think that a lot of people don't focus on, and this is actually really interesting. Like this is something you can go down a complete like rabbit hole on its own, which I kind of like dove into a little bit. Have you ever heard of Edward Bernays?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so Edward Bernays was like, I forget what they called him, like the founder of like marketing.
Propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda. But it was so interesting though, because the propaganda that he was known for was not like a political thing. It was a corporate thing. He was actually creating, like, there was a commercial that he made, right, where he would actually pay like doctors. So this is really this will blow people's minds when I tell them this. Okay, so bacon used to not be part of the American breakfast, right? And what happened is that sometime in the 1900s, Edward Bernays was talking to the pork industry, or like yeah, basically the pork industry, and they were like, hey, we're realizing that like we have all this pork and no one's buying it, like no one wants pork, so how can we get some sales for this pork, right? And then Edward Bernays was like, I have an idea. Like, let's create the American cuisine to include pork in the breakfast, the breakfast meal, right? And so all of a sudden, they started putting out commercials of like, get bacon, bacon's part of your healthy breakfast, and all these different things, right? And then all of a sudden, the pork industry started getting sales. And there was other things like that too, right? Another thing was cigarettes, right? So like Edward Bernays saw that, okay, feminism was going on, and women were starting to promote ideas of freedom, right? So he was like, why don't we create commercials that it shows like women smoking, and we call cigarettes freedom torches, right? So they're we're gonna use women because they're the ones who are wanting to especially during like the early women's rights movement and stuff like that, right? They were the ones who were wanting to pursue the concept of freedom. So why don't we specifically sell to women, or market this idea to women that cigarettes are somehow related to an idea of freedom, right? And there was many other things like this, but the interesting thing with Edward Bernays is that he realized that marketing could go even deeper than just advertising and just blatantly, showing, ads and stuff to people, right? He thought that he learned that he could actually culturally engineer a society to have values that lead to them consuming. And that's the key point, right? And that's what I want to branch off of, because and there's a lot of Edward Bernays. I can go super deep into him, but I don't think I have time for it in this podcast. But you can look. He has a bunch of different books. The engineering, just to tell you how much of he was into cultural engineering. One of his books is literally called "The Engineering of Consent." So if you read that book, you'll find out exactly the stuff that he was doing. But the main point is, he learned that the best way to get people to consume in these corporations is through cultural engineering, right? And I think we're seeing that. so much in our society today, right? And I'm going to expand upon that, why that relates to dating. But the main thing to understand is that, yeah, you can basically culturally engineer a society to have certain values that makes them more of a consumer, right? And basically, when we look at modern day, let's think of like dating apps. We think of pornography. We think of a lot of these corporations that actually have to do within the sphere of sex and relationships. A lot of these corporations came about during the sexual revolution. And if you think about before the sexual revolution, sex was mostly something that was within marriage. It was mostly, relegated to, like having children. It wasn't this thing that was like so focused on like pleasure and all these different things, right? But then what happened is that at a certain point, there started to be a couple people who were like, hey, we don't like this. We don't like how sexuality is so strict and it's so only relegated to marriage. Like we need to make this a bigger thing. Now it can be argued where that came from, like what started that. Was it something that was a thing that was planned out? Was it something that was just a couple people just wanted to have wanted to have more freedom? That can be debated, but long story short, that's what happened, right? And this happened kind of in the mid to yeah, I'd say like the mid 1900s to late 1900s, right? And so now there was a culture where they wanted to have more sexual freedom, right? And what happened is that all these corporations saw an opportunity to make money. Now, again, that can be argued. Did these corporations, see that, plan this thing out and actually want to culturally engineer society so they can make money, or was it the other way around, right? That can be debated as well. But long story short is that a lot of people started, living a more like, promiscuous lifestyle. They started, indulging more in, sex for pleasure. And that opened the door for a lot of markets for pornography, for, nowadays we see things like dating apps, and this is the funny thing, right? If this is the thing that people don't understand about dating apps, right? They make money off of people being single. They make money off of people not being in happy relationships, because the more time that you spend on a dating app, the more money that you put into a dating app, it's because you haven't found anybody yet. It's because you haven't gotten a relationship. Like dating apps, they want you to stay on there. They don't want you to find somebody and then leave. They make money from you paying for Tinder Gold or paying to see more of your messages or whatever, right? That's how they make their money. And the same thing with pornography. Pornography makes money by people not being in healthy monogamous relationships. They make money, through people being single, alone, desperate, sexually frustrated. Like that's the way these corporations make money, and there's a lot of other.
I think it's interesting, like across, because I also would include the pharmaceutical industry. They don't want you to be healthy. They want you to maintain a certain level of sickness. They don't want you to die either, because then they'd also lose a customer. So they want you just to live a long, unhealthy life. That would be their ideal situation.
Yeah,
And
live a long life where you're constantly sick.
yeah, but not so sick that you can't like, go to the doctor and so this like slightly sick.
Yeah,
Um, okay, and then the other one is military industrial complex. They don't want there to be peace, they'd be out of business. And then you could I would also bring in like a lot of the social justice industry. They don't want racism to end, or else they wouldn't have a business. They wouldn't be in business anymore. So all these things start to become
media.
these. Yeah. So you can see this in all these different areas. And I forget what the original point I was going to make was about that, but you can see it how it moves through the same dynamic moves through all these different areas of our. Oh yeah. So the key is they basically want you, those industries, they want you dependent on them, right? And so when we start to be interdependent with each other in healthy community, you know, if we have a wife or a husband and we have children and we have neighbors that we're friendly with and we're helping each other and they help us and we help them and we're sharing time together and we're making music together and we're, spending time in the forest and, like sharing time at the lake together. It's like none of that is helpful for this thing you're talking about. It
Mhm.
doesn't make money. So that's not a lifestyle that is, although they'll show it in the commercials, right? They'll show it in the pharmaceutical medicine. They'll show you at the lake with your family,
Yeah,
they'll,
alongside listing all the negative side effects of their drug.
they'll show it on the McDonald's commercial or the beer commercial or to actually be living that way means you're not looking to them for fulfillment and they don't like that.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and that's kind of my point is that like, I feel like healthy relationships, and specifically, I'm not trying to, conform anyone to any ideals, but specifically like healthy monogamous relationships are exactly the opposite of what these corporations would want. The dating apps, the pornography industry, a lot of these, they rely off of, having a man who's cheating on his wife or having desperate lonely men or having women who constantly enter into toxic relationships and get used and then go back onto these dating apps again, right? They rely on all that stuff. And I think people don't understand, and this is a crucial point, people don't understand that a lot of our society, a lot of the values that our society has, especially the toxic values that most people probably don't even realize are toxic, those come from these corporations because these corporations and this is another thing too that I wasn't even thinking about, but it just came to mind. Listen to most of the music in the modern day, and what are the values that are promoted in that music? It's not be in a healthy, loving relationship, have a family, like live a healthy life, eat healthy. It's like all these hoes and violence and do drugs. It's like basically like pure like hedonism and like violence. It's like the most like degenerate like music that's heavily promoted nowadays. And I
Plus,
think,
plus the music itself, just is really bad. It's like it's vibrationally, it's just really like toxic. Just the actual sound itself.
yeah, I would even say it's like demonic, honestly.
Yeah, like demonic. Yeah.
I would say like if you look at some of these like music videos, it's like it's just dark, dude. It's really
Okay.
dark.
So you're saying you're laying out the scene for why dating is very difficult for Gen Z. They're kind of up against all these different components, and you have to kind of buck this system that's designed for your failure and demise.
Well, I also, and I, yeah, but I also want to emphasize as well that a lot of why these values exist is because they're culturally engineered. And I think that's something people don't understand because people a lot of times like to believe, and I think we talked about in this the last podcast too, but a lot of people like to believe that the values that they believe in are their own and that they're good, right? And that's hard to believe when you actually realize that you're being used and manipulated for somebody else's profit, right? When you come to that realization, it's you have to now combat you have to now deal with the fact that the music industry, and like we were saying, like the music industry, honestly think that the reason they promote that music, maybe there's a spiritual element to it too, right? But I think in the materialist sense, the reason why they promote that music is because it creates a culture that is heavily consumerist. Like there's a reason why all these rappers wear Gucci and they wear Versace and they tell you like you got to chase money and you got to like buy all these expensive things because that is profiting somebody. And the same way that they say live a life like where you're degenerate and you're violent and you're abusing women, you're seeing women as sexual objects, like all those things contribute to a culture that is heavily consumerist and heavily materialist. And the more toxic relationships people have, the more people are going to spend time on social media looking at other people, women's social media pages. The more time they're going to spend on pornography, the more time they're going to spend on dating apps, the more time they're going to spend, whatever it is, right? A lot of these corporations, they're not going to get profit, like for example, from what you said, like they're not going to get profit from like a guy who's living, in a has a family and like goes to the lake and like
or like I was thinking of the Amish. They're terrible for business.
the Amish are probably like the worst, honestly, because they literally live like they don't even like have like technology. So
Yeah.
like there's like no one who's profiting from them except maybe like the farms or something. But
Well, they network with each other. They support each other. But listen, this is a great question. It's kind of a theme that's running through here. Is you're bringing up like this is like this culture engineering and this conditioning, and people don't even know that these are not their own thoughts or their own ideas or their own um, original perceptions, right? So I think the question at this point is, how do you separate this cultural engineering, this collective conditioning that is um, not for your benefit, right? That's there to control you and make you a consumer. Um, Shift that to thoughts, ideas, ways of seeing the world, perceptions that are generated within yourself, that come from within yourself. How do we make that shift?
mhm. Well, the first thing I would like to say is, well, yeah, the first thing that's important is first of all, it's pulling yourself away from this consumerist world. That's the first part. I mean, that's probably the most important thing in general, right? Like you said, like having a life where you spend time outside, you spend time with people in real life, you have, a good family relationships, you have healthy relationships in your own life where you commune with people and there's in-person connection. Because I think it's such a problem our modern day society has, especially during the pandemic and all that stuff. People were like locked up in their house. Like that's terrible. It's like I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called, like, the book is literally called Loneliness, and it goes into the psychology of like why relationships and spending time with people is so important. Like it's underrated. Like literally, like there's statistics that show that being alone is worse than smoking like 3 packs of cigarettes a day or something. Like
Mhm.
it's so bad, and people don't realize how bad it is. And I think our society is prioritizing the wrong things. Our society like does not create, another thing too. I was watching this there was a special on Netflix, and it was like the blue zones. And the blue zones, I'm sure you heard about it before, but the blue zones are places in the world where people live to or live past 100. And one of the main things with all these blue zones is that they all had a sense of community. They all took care of their elders. They all had, churches or places of gathering that they gathered and they had communion, right? And
Okay,
I
so
think,
so let's pause a second. So you're saying be aware of this culture engineering, be aware of this conditioning, and what its real intention is, and what it wants to do to you and make you, and that it's not for your benefit, and unplug from it essentially, right? And then plug into that which is um, healthy, what?
natural.
Healthy, natural, life affirming, really brings a true sense of well-being.
Hmm.
And you're articulating what these things are. And I think that I can't imagine there's many people listening that would disagree. I think these are just facts. This is truth, and people know the things that make them feel good, that give them a sense of well-being. And I think there's a challenge. The challenge is, and I was listening to a podcast with Jonathan Haidt, who I'd recommend. I believe he's a psychologist, and he's been studying things around. Basically, he's talking a lot about the invention of the smartphone and how that's been so detrimental for people of your generation, the younger generation. And he's saying the problem is people kind of know this and they realize this, and but if I get off my phone and everyone else is still on it, then I'm even more alone now than I was before, you know?
Yeah.
So he's saying it needs to be like a collective movement of groups of people, of communities of people that together are committed to getting off the smartphone or getting off the screen and sharing time together with a collective intention. And he's saying that he is seeing that happening, and there's some things happening in schools that they're eliminating the smartphone from the schools, and different things are happening where parents are realizing it. And he said even the kids are are realizing it, and they're actually preferring, if they have the option, they actually like to play with actual real kids,
Mm.
and spend time with actual real kids than be on the screen. But there just needs to be a collective commitment. So it feels like that's and that's probably why we do stuff like this, right? The value of something like this, of podcasting, is there's the opportunity for people to respond and be like, yeah, I want to move forward in this lifestyle too. I want to move forward in this way. I want to connect with other people that are on the same path. And I want to live in community with other people that are on the same path. And I want to, live in on land with people that are on the same path. And, the more that that starts to happen, then this culture collective shift happens. And I don't think it's not about like fighting these people or like, you know, creating violence against these people, or it's not really even giving them any attention at all. It's turning our attention away from this structure that wants to consume and control and manipulate and deceive, turning our attention away and turning our attention towards that which we want to create and we're called to create together.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely important. I mean, a lot of these younger kids, I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's so bad for a lot of these younger kids that parents are actually getting into like, they're like legally trying to take down, social media, aspects of social media and like, and they're realizing because a lot of their kids are it's just being detrimental. It's like they're addicted. They can't get off their iPad. They're on their iPad for 10 hours a
Yep.
day.
Yep.
They don't have any social interaction with other kids. They're they probably have mental health issues, so it's a huge thing. And another thing I think too, besides the just unplugging yourself from it, I think it's also just to know what's important. I think having a sense of values that are aligned with a healthy life is important, right? Because a lot of people, their value system is skewed, right? They don't value the right things. Maybe they value materialism and status as the most important thing. And in a society that's extremely unhealthy, it's not good to value status in that society because you're going to have to live an unhealthy life that prioritizes the wrong things to get status in that society, right? So I think like a lot of people, they prioritize, like they have to put um they have to prioritize the simple things in life, which is having healthy relationships, right? Having community, having, living a healthy lifestyle where you are eating the right things, you're getting exercise, you're spending time with loved ones, you're having this real, having some type of spiritual connection, right? Like all these things are things that seem like obvious to a lot of people, right? But the problem is that our society has literally injected our society day in and day out with all these toxic ideologies and toxic value systems that it's almost impossible for people to even like fully grasp that what a healthy lifestyle is these things, right? Because there's so many avenues for our society to, like for example, like feminism, right? Like feminism was something that was so like initially it was something that was so great. It was, giving women like the rights to, become what they want to be. If they want to be a doctor, or they want to do this, that, and the third, or, giving them the right to vote and all these different things. And then eventually it started to become this thing of like, and again, I don't want to generalize, but nowadays there are a lot of women who are, it's like this thing of like I hate men and like marriage is bad and the relationships are part of the patriarchy and it turned into this super like toxic thing. And it goes to show you how a lot of the things that are like originally were geared in a good direction or like originally are geared for something that was good or something that somebody might be passionate about, some type of social justice movement or something like that, right, has now been corrupted by some sort of toxic ideology. And I personally think that that's not an accident. I personally think that that's on purpose because they don't want people to have healthy relationships. They don't want people to be to have a value system that's aligned with health, longevity, happiness,
Okay, so
etc.
it's like we become aware of that, right? And then it's like we said in the beginning, responsibility, taking responsibility. It doesn't matter what they want. It matters what you want. And taking that responsibility to create that life. And I do think, like I said, that second component is connecting with other people that are on the same path. And I think that's the way forward. Um, so
But I think that's true, but I think there's another crucial part too, right? Because a lot of especially in my generation, right? A lot of younger people do not realize, like even know like what good values systems are. And I think the simple way to realize is look at what makes you feel good. Look at what makes you feel happy. Do you feel
yeah,
better when you eat a cheeseburger from McDonald's, or do you feel better when you have, some salmon with, brown rice and
whole
broccoli or
food from
something?
the earth.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like you have to like focus on how you're actually feeling versus the values that society is trying to give you.
Yeah.
Because if you are in a relationship and that relationship is really healthy, you're going to feel completely different than a relationship where you're getting used, a guy's like objectifying you. And it's crazy, dude. Like when I tell you this, it's insane like how many women I've run into, and this is not an understatement. I know so many women that I've talked to where they know that the society that they live in, like the relationships that they were in were very toxic and unhealthy, but they still continue to get into those relationships because that is what the society is promoting. That is what the music that they're listening to is promoting. That
It's
is
like,
what their friends are getting into,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So yeah, I like what you're saying. I like notice what feels good, notice what makes you feel happy, notice what gives you a sense of well-being, notice what gives you a sense of fulfillment. The way I've been articulating, I'm actually writing something I'm going to share later this week. The way I've been articulating is like approach your life like a scientist, like approach it like a scientist and like just really be able to observe your life closely, pay close attention, and really notice, like, first of all, what's not working, right? Because probably most of what you're doing is not working if you're in the dynamic we're talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
notice what's not working and notice what is working. And it's not that complicated. Like, stop doing the things that are not working and start doing the things more and more that are working. Less and less of what's not working, more and more what is working, you know? And then maybe you can call in support, you can call in accountability, you can call in discipline. Um, and sometimes this requires like moving somewhere different. Sometimes this requires like having a new group of friends. Sometimes this requires like major changes in your lifestyle. It could require different things. Sometimes it requires deepening your spiritual practice and connection. It probably always requires that component, right? Because that's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really think that that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly that simple. And like I said, like the other element to that is also realizing that you shouldn't always focus on conformity. Like you shouldn't focus on like, because and this is something people don't understand. And the only reason I think honestly I would probably be the same as everyone else if I didn't have a background in philosophy and psychology and stuff like that, where I actually studied how influence and how the mind works and how you have to have critical thought. Like those things are really important, because if you can't think critically, if you can't question. I remember there was this quote by was it Aristotle? It was like, do not take on an idea without criticizing it, or without with like basically don't like blatantly take on an idea without actually questioning if that idea like makes sense, or is it even something you should take on. And I think that's a problem with the younger generation, especially because of social media, and we live in a very like highly technological age. It's easy for them to get influenced. Like you go on TikTok and now they're probably gonna, I don't know, they might ban TikTok because China's like basically like owns it, right? But like there's so many like younger kids and like a lot of the younger generation where they just they see a TikTok trend and they just follow it. They don't even think about like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, oh, everyone has TikTok lights on TikTok, let me get that. You know, everyone's doing this dance on TikTok, let me get that. And like obviously dances and lights and stuff like that are innocent, but there are a lot of things that aren't innocent. There are a lot of things where the younger generation is taking on without question, the value systems, belief systems that they're taking on without question that are extremely detrimental. And I think without the ability to critically think, without the ability to realize that the values that society promotes are not always good. And in fact, most of the time they're not good because they're in the benefit of a few people who don't give a crap about you, right? And so when you come to those realizations, and when you come to the realization that you have to be able to think for yourself, then it opens the door for you to find out, okay, what is healthy for me and what is good for me versus, what does society want from me, or what do my parents want from me, or anything like that. What do my friends want from me? You have to come to that personal sovereignty where you can think for yourself. You can create your own ideas. You can like take on an idea without just believing it and actually think, okay, is this right? Like, should I objectify women? Should I, live my life, in toxic relationships? Should I
And approach it
eat
like a
a diet that's
scientist.
unhealthy?
Does it make you feel good? Does it give you a sense of well-being? Does it give you a sense of fulfillment, Like,
Yeah.
this is for everything. It's not just this is for the Bible. This is for the Quran. This is for, the religious circles. This is for any philosopher. This is for anything you come across. Like, approach it like a scientist. Don't take anybody's word for it. Like, really observe, does it actually work? You know, does it have practical application that actually works in your life? Does it give you a sense of fulfillment, well-being, fulfillment? And that's something that you need to observe for yourself. And it's not up to anybody else to tell you whether it is or it isn't. That's up to you. So
And
yeah.
I think another part of that too is it good for yourself, but also like this is something not a lot of people do, but like look at the lives of other people and see the mistakes that they made and the choices that they made and learn from those. Like a lot of times like people will see, their friends have these, specific value systems, and it's led to a lot of it's led to a lot of pain in their lives, led to a lot of pain in other people's lives, and they see that and they still don't live a different life from that. They still decide, okay, well, I'll live the way they're living, despite the fact that it's made them extremely miserable and unhappy, right? And there's a way where you can look at people's lives, like you can see somebody who's in a very healthy relationship, and you could say, "Wow, that looks great," right? What values do those people have? What belief systems do those people have? What lifestyle are they living, right? And then trying to take on those ideas for yourself versus these other people who have terrible toxic relationships, and you're taking on those values from those people, and now you're caught up in that same world with them because you're taking on those ideas, those values, right? So I think there's a way where you can look around and you can see these different lifestyles, you can see these different value systems, these different belief systems, and you can see which ones are leading to the most optimum, fulfilling, happy, healthy lives, right?
Mhm.
And when you actually do that and you actually compare, these different values and belief systems, right? You can come to a conclusion of which one is most ideal, right? And you can do that, obviously through, like you said, the personal experimentation, but you also can do it from just observing, just looking around, and like not observing in a sense of I'm just going to take on the first thing that's in front of me, but I'm actually going to be critical and analyze and take in all this data and then see, okay, well, this guy, he eats this type of diet. So I know if I eat that diet, or if I have this type of relationship, or if I have this type of job, that's going to make me happy and healthy, right? So I think that's really important. And another key aspect to that is it's not like, this is another thing people have misconception about. It's not what the majority of people are doing, right? That's another thing. Like just because the majority of people are doing something does not mean that that's the right way to live, right? Just because most of the people in your area or most of the people in the world or your country or whatever are doing this thing does not mean it's the right way to live. In fact, and this is another reason why I love Greek philosophy. A lot of the ancient Greek philosophers, they would always talk very negatively about the masses. They would always say, don't do what the majority does. Like they had a very different way of thinking than most people think, because their belief system was like the masses live terribly. Like they don't have a good way of living. And us philosophers, we've actually have thought critically for, like we have learned how to think critically, and because of that we have a better understanding of what the optimum life is, right? And I think if you can live your life like a philosopher, if you can learn how to critically think and you can learn how to analyze and take in data and find what is optimum, you're going to have a lot better life than most people, because most people, they either take on the values that are right in front of them, that their friends are doing, that their neighbor, whatever that's in their area, right? Or they just do what the majority of people are doing because they want to fit into society. You have to completely put that aside and just focus on what is optimum in truth, right? For yourself, but also, for other people, what they're doing that has led them to living a good life, a good and fulfilling and healthy life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And differentiating that from people who are living an unhealthy life.
Mm-hmm. So what did you say was the going to be the title of this podcast episode again?
I have a couple ideas,
Okay,
but
tell me again, because I want to tie it into the theme what I'm going to say next.
but yeah, I mean, I think it was gonna be like why men are lonelier than ever before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, there's another aspect part of it too, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
So, any other point you want to make about why men are lonelier than ever before? I think we covered quite a few of the components. I know there's a lot longer list, but
Well, I want to get more into kind of the solution and like um the kind of the ideologies that are in like this online manosphere thing.
yeah. Well, do you want to hit a little bit more of the solution? And then I've been doing a fast, so I'm gonna need to eat some food soon and close it out.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, yeah, let's dive into this a little bit. So, I want to kind of talk about like what are the steps that men can take to basically become an attractive man and to live a life where, you can, because again, like the main issue is like a lot of men are single, lonely, whatever, right? So, I think it's like it's like how to how to get how to be attractive to women, how to attract a partner. But then the other things that follow on to that is like being a successful man, and like being because those two things go hand in hand, right? um but I think, and another thing too, which is surprising, a lot of men also struggle with like making friends too, which I didn't realize is such a big thing. But a lot of men are, they don't have any friends, they're lonely, they um so it's more than just being getting a partner. There's other elements too with younger men where they struggle with friendship, they struggle with socialization. um so yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit.
Okay, what's the solution?
So basically I think, and I've learned a lot in my own life too, but I think the first thing that you can do as a man, to be more attractive to women, and to, basically have a better dating life, is, just to become more attractive, like basically work on yourself in every area, right?
Mhm. We
And that
covered we, we,
means,
we covered that.
yeah, but
Okay.
specifically what that means is, take care of your physical health, right? Go to the gym, right? Take care of your body,
Mm-hmm.
take care of your hygiene, take a shower, make sure you get like, it's crazy how many like women I hear that they're just like I wish men just had like better hygiene, or just, did this, that, and a third, like didn't like trim their trim their nails, these different types of things, right? So like just take care of yourself, like get a haircut, make sure your beard is nice and trimmed, like make sure you dress well, you learn things about style, right? Because the thing that a lot of men don't understand is like I think attraction is a game. Like I honestly think it's a game. Like there was this one book actually that came out. It was by this guy named Neil Strauss, and it was called The Game. You ever heard of that?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
So that was more like a pickup thing, and I'm not. I don't think. I think pickup is kind of toxic. I don't think it's really good for men to get into. But I think like attraction is like I think it is somewhat of a game because it's like you're kind of it's like a it's almost like something where it's like a challenge that you're learning through. And I think there's there's ways that you can learn to be attractive just through trial and error, but there are like basic things that you can know as well, right? And I think like I said, like doing those things, having a good sense of style, taking care of your grooming, your hygiene, and then also like the main thing I think that men don't understand is they think like, oh, I gotta have all this status, all this money, all these different things, right? And I think more what women care about is your lifestyle. Like, do you have a cool lifestyle that a woman wants to enter into? Because if a woman's going to be in a relationship with you, she's going to be doing the things that you do, right? She's going to be part of your life. So if you have a lifestyle that is attractive, that is something that like she would want to be a part of, then that's what you should work on creating. Like create a life for yourself. And again, this isn't something that you should do with women in like as the main purpose of it, right? This should be something you do for yourself, right? But as a side effect of having a really cool lifestyle, having a lifestyle that's fulfilling, that's adventurous, that's that makes you happy, women are going to see that and they're going to want to enter into that lifestyle with you. And that's what a relationship is, because when you're in a relationship with a woman, you two are sharing your lifestyles, right? So if you have a lifestyle that is very attractive to a woman who is a high quality woman who you also find attractive, right? She has the values that you're looking for. If you have a lifestyle that is attractive to her, then she's going to want to enter into that, right? So I think again, like creating a lifestyle that is attractive to women is very important. And and then the next element I think, which would be besides just the being attractive part, right? Which we talked about again, lifestyle, taking care of your hygiene, your make sure you're exercising, all those different things, and obviously the other aspect of that is just purpose, having purpose, having a mission, right? Um, the other element to that is the actual talking with women, the actual like dating, the actual being, uh, being in conversation with women, conversing with women, that type of thing, right? And I think that's actually where men struggle more with, because there's a lot of men who actually are attracted to women. And I know this for myself personally, right? Like when I was younger, I would like I was like, oh, the good looking guy, like in school, right? And all the girls are like, gee, all this stuff, right? But I couldn't talk to any of them. I didn't know how to, like, I was so awkward. I remember this one situation where I was in class and this girl like gave me a note, right? And I took the note and I held it in my hands. And I liked the girl. Like I actually like liked her a lot. I liked her like probably for like a good part of that year. And this was back in middle school. And I held the note in my hands, and when I was so nervous that the sweat in my hand actually like meshed through the note, and I couldn't even read it anymore because I was so nervous, right? And I think like a lot of guys, like there are guys where they are attractive to women, but they don't know how to interact with women, right? They don't know how to talk to women. They don't know how to actually create a relationship or express interest to a woman, right? And I think we're, in that situation, I had to learn the very hard way, because I was always the guy who was like shy and socially awkward and insecure and that type of thing, right? And I had to basically push myself outside of my comfort zone, where I had to, one of the examples I like to use is, I'm sure you heard of this. Have you heard of exposure therapy? So
Yes.
exposure therapy is, I'm sure most people have heard of it, but basically what it is like, let's say somebody has a phobia of snakes, right? So like in exposure therapy, like, they might show the person like a picture of a snake, right? Instead of like a real snake, because obviously that would overwhelm them, but they might show them like a picture of a snake. Then they might show them a video of a snake. Then they might.
But what are you exposing yourself to in this case?
So basically, what you're exposing yourself to is social interaction with women, and you do it in a
Yep.
gradual progression, right?
Yep.
So this is actually something I did for myself, right? Where I would say hi, and it wasn't like, it doesn't have to be just with women initially too, because a lot of men are socially awkward, right? So initially, it could just be saying hi to the cashier, or talking to somebody in the elevator, asking how the weather is, this type of thing, right? And then over time, as you put yourself out there, you do more and more. You talk to, maybe you see a girl that you find attractive and you say hi to her. Like, you might not ask for a number, but you might say hi, like, what's the time or something. Like, nice weather we're having today, right? That, and you don't put any pressure on yourself. Like, there's not any pressure for you to like get her number or to get her on a date or anything. It's just like, you're just talking to her. You're just doing that. And then you realize, like, your brain starts to realize, like, hey, this actually isn't so bad. Like, this is not like I'm getting punched in the face, or, like, it's not this end of the world thing. It's actually
But
pretty easy.
the only reason it would feel that way is because you're too fixed on the outcome. This is like really key, especially with the way the male brain works, is people get very fixed on the outcome. So because they're so fixed on the outcome, they're nervous about, oh, am I going to get there or not get there? Am I going to? So you got to like not be fixed on the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this many times, but it's like, to me, if you're first starting to engage with somebody, someone of the opposite sex, let's say, then it's curiosity and appreciation. Like, keep those two things, because if you're wanting to talk to somebody, the only reason you want to talk to somebody is there's something about them that interests you, right? So what is it about them that interests you? And kind of feel into what that is and find the way to communicate what you're curious them, what either you're curious about with them or what you appreciate about them. So I should say something interests you, meaning there's something about them that you want to learn more about, or there's something in that you already see that you really appreciate about them. So be able to communicate those two things without being focused on a fixed outcome, right? And then the number one component of all, so much of what my work, right, is based on the wow, the now, the bigelow, is like being present.
Yeah.
So just to be able to be present in the moment, not getting caught up in the future, not being worried about all the things that went wrong in the past, just being in the moment. And if you're nervous, that's probably a good thing. It probably means this is a woman that's quality, this is someone that is significant. So it's not a bad thing to be nervous, but you don't let it stop you, because nervous, you could just say you're excited. It's an exciting moment. There's a lot of energy that's present. So that's okay. You just bring that into the conversation, right? Instead of being blocked, bring it into the conversation, be aware of your breath, tune into your breath. We're always working with the breath, and the breath is such a key component. I also wanted to bring in one other thing. It's kind of obvious, but I think it needs to be said when we're talking about like what is attractive to a woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being loving, being kind, being caring. It's important not to overlook those things and just verbally acknowledge them. That these are the most important components of all, right? You could have the most perfectly manicured beard and have abs and you know have lots of money. And if you're an asshole that treats women like shit, it's not gonna go well for you. So that
Well, I
that
mean,
that's a key component.
I will say, like, um, before I get to that, let me
I know what you're gonna say, but I'm not gonna agree with you. Just so you know.
I'll get to that, but I wanted to point on another point you said. So yeah, I think the thing with what's it called? The thing with being present and I think is really important. But another thing you said about the nervousness, I think acceptance is really crucial. Like
Yeah.
acceptance of the way you feel, because another thing is, and I remember there was a dating coach who actually said, I saw this one dating coach who was talking about this, and I think it's really like probably one of the biggest things that changed my interaction with women, was understanding that it's okay to have the feelings you have. Like if you feel attracted to a woman, don't try to repress that. Like don't try to like, because a lot of guys, the reason they get nervous is because they see like an attractive woman and they feel a lot of attraction for her, and then they like try to repress it, or they try to like they don't know how to deal with that feeling. And the key to having like a good interaction with a woman is letting that flow through you. Like don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of that, like, because there's a natural polarity, there's a feminine masculine polarity, and that masculine polarity is like, being the kind of like the leader in that situation, leading the interaction, leading, and then also creating that polarity of like, the you're like the plus sign and she's the minus sign, so like you want to create that kind of polarity where you're a little bit, you're letting that attraction flow through you, and the girl can feel that. And if she doesn't feel that, it's not, at that point she's just like a friend, at that point it's like you're like talking to like, I don't know, like a stranger or something, right? But if you allow that polarity to flow through you, then there's actually the romantic attraction there. There's the sexual attraction there. And that's, the woman wants to feel that. She doesn't, like, a lot of men are like afraid that like the woman like doesn't want to feel that, right? Or she like doesn't want the guy to, it's like it's something that you should repress, right? And I think a lot of times that comes from men have like insecurities about like rejection, right? Like, oh, if I let this flow through me, or if I show my intentions, then like it's gonna be rejected or whatever, right? And again, it's not, I'm not saying like be creepy or like be like a weirdo. What I'm saying is like, just be a man who like you can let your energy flow through you, and you can, like, the nervousness you have, instead of like trying to repress it, or instead of trying to repress these feelings, try to feel them and let it flow through you, and be in the moment and be in the interaction. And that's when you'll have the best interaction with a woman, because you're not so caught up in here, you're caught up in your body, you're caught up in the words she's saying, you're caught up in the energy of the situation. And that's when the best interactions with women happen, is when you can kind of let that flow through you.
Fully
But
agree.
yeah, but I think another element, too, as well with that is, you were talking about, so one thing I'll ask you about this is because you brought it up, is you were saying something about being nice and
I didn't
being
say no. Did not say nice.
okay.
I don't believe being nice is going to be helpful.
Okay,
I
well,
said
I do.
loving, kind, and caring.
Okay. I do want to talk on this point, because this is a big, and this is not like even something personal for me. This is like, I'm just speaking for like the millions of men who are like into like the red pill and all this stuff, right? Like there is a huge, like, like Andrew Tate, all these guys, like a lot of them, I think a lot of the reasons why they come about is because there is a huge thing where it's always like nice guys finish last. The asshole is the guy who gets the girl. This type of thing, right? Now, I personally believe that, like, despite the fact that there are women who are attracted to men who may not be the nicest or most genuinely
Yeah,
good
but
guys,
why are they attracted to those men?
um, that's a good question.
Because they have trauma, because they've been conditioned to have low self-worth and low self-esteem. So, um, you don't want, it's not like, oh, let me be an asshole to get a girl that has trauma and low self-worth and low self-esteem. No, that's not what you want.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I honestly think, I think a part of it, and here's the thing, like I agree with what you're saying, and I think in terms of relationship, right? Because we do have to acknowledge the fact that there are men who are like, the stereotypical like F boy type guys, or they just try to sleep with women, right? So it's like they don't even care about being nice or any of that stuff, because their goal is just, I want to have a one night stand with this girl. So their whole thing is just like, let me be attractive and manipulate this girl. That's like the whole pickup thing. It's like, let me just get this girl for this one night or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So I think
that's not really what we're talking about here.
no, but I just want to differentiate because
Yeah,
I think there are men who can get away with being an asshole because they're not looking for a relationship. They're not like when you're in a relationship, you can't be an asshole because it's just not
exactly. That's my point.
going it's going to be toxic,
That's
right?
exactly my point.
Yeah, but what I am saying is that like I think the reason why a lot of men like think that like they have to be assholes or they have to be like this guy who's not caring because that is a huge thing. I want that's why I want to acknowledge it. I think the reason why guys think that is because most of the men who sleep with like the most women, they don't prioritize relationships. They prioritize like one night stands. They prioritize, like their whole thing is manipulating the woman.
I think you just nailed the distinction perfectly. So if you want to have a lot of one night stands with a lot of different women, and to be honest, I would say they're mostly, to be totally frank, like low quality women,
Yeah.
then that would be a tactic that you would use, right? But if you want to have a quality, committed, intimate, dynamic relationship, potentially a marriage, right, with a high quality woman, then that's definitely not anything you'd want to engage in.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, I do think that the asshole guys do have one thing that I think men who are looking for a relationship can learn from, and that is the asshole guy generally is pretty confident. He's generally like knows what he wants and he's not afraid to let his desire be hidden, right? And I think a lot of guys who like there's a lot of guys who are genuinely like great, nice guys, like very like loving, kind guys, and they
Not
struggle.
nice. I'm not. We don't want nice guys.
Okay, well,
So let's break that down because you said it a couple times now. So nice. What you're saying is totally accurate. So you can be loving, kind, and caring and be strong. In fact, I would say you have to be strong. You could be strong, you can be solid, you can have a clear sense of direction, clear sense of purpose. You could be unwavering,
mm,
in your commitment. You can be unwavering in your integrity and your commitment to truth and honesty and the honesty in your words, in your thoughts, and your deeds,
yeah,
right? Um, so that's what we're talking about. And then the nice thing is like I have a sense of low self-worth and low self-esteem, and I lack self-love. So let me like kind of show me how to be, show me what I should say to like make you like me, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's like the nice guy.
yeah. That's true. Yeah,
So
I think
that's the distinction.
I think one thing, like, I think Jordan Peterson actually touched really well on this point because he has a quote where it's like, a good man is not a nice guy. A good man is a dangerous man who has it under control,
Yeah,
right? And that's because a dangerous guy, like, if you think of like the superheroes, like Batman, for example, right? Like, Batman can like beat the shit out of somebody. Like, if he needed to, he could, right? But he only does it for like the criminals or the people who like, he's protecting the city against, right?
exactly. And everybody likes Batman.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think one thing is, and the cool thing of Batman too, just to say, like Batman also isn't afraid to go against the law if it means he's doing justice, right?
Mhm.
So it's not anything like the nice guy, because the nice guy would like try to like be nice and like, oh, I'm not gonna hurt anybody, I'm gonna do what looks good for society. But the guy who's like a good guy, like a good man, he doesn't care about what society wants or what looking good for other people or trying to win people's approval. He wants to do what's right. He wants to do what's
Mhm.
just. He wants to do the right thing always, and that is like it, and he knows he has to do that even if he's putting his life at risk, even if he's putting himself in challenging
We
situations.
could say he's dedicated and committed to the integrity within himself and the truth that lies within himself and living
Yeah.
from that place.
Yeah, I think that is the difference between a guy who's a good guy versus a nice guy.
Yeah.
Because a nice guy, you could even say a nice guy might even be manipulative in a way because he's trying to put on this facade
Yep.
of I'm trying to like let me do this so I can win this girl's approval, or
Yeah,
so
and
on and so
that's
forth.
the whole like virtue signaling culture and all that stuff, right? I think why there's a pushback against that is because it lacks integrity,
Mhm.
you know, and so yeah,
But I think yeah, I think the most important thing again is yeah, so like again, you don't need to be an asshole. I think a lot of guys like probably need to hear that. You don't need to be an asshole. You just need to be first of all, don't like it's like you said, like if you want to attract like a quality woman who has like who knows who wants to have a healthy relationship, who wants to be treated well, then you will attract that if you are that type of guy. But if you are an asshole, then you're going to attract a lot of women who have trauma, who, you know, are used to toxic relationships and so on and so forth, right? And then to
right.
add on to that, being a nice guy is not the alternate solution, right? The solution is to be a good man who knows how to be attractive to women, who has a lifestyle, you know, who has all the elements of being attracted to women, who knows how to be charismatic, knows how to, you know, carry his you know, be in the moment, let his, you know, his polarity be there in the interaction, right? But then also he is looking for, you know, something like good, like he's looking for a relationship and he wants to dive deeper with this woman, right? And again, if you are that type of man, if you are a man who is has learned how to be charismatic, and like I said, like that happens through having interactions with women. Like it doesn't happen, and this is an extremely important point. It doesn't happen through this. Like socialization out of
He's
all things.
pointing to his head
Yeah, socialization and dating out of all things is not understood through here. It's
through
understood
the mind.
it's understood through experience. It's having experiences. Like the only way that you can learn how to socialize, how to interact with women is through actually doing it. Is through
Yeah,
taking those steps, and in the beginning it can be small steps, but you have to actually put yourself out there. Like there's no other way to do it besides putting
yeah.
yourself out there and talking to
So
women
get off the screen, get off the video games, get
get
off the
off the
porn, put yourself out there, face the challenge,
yeah,
face the challenge, embrace the challenge.
exactly.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right, final points.
Yeah, I mean that's the main thing. So just, you know, put yourself out there, you know, learn from those interactions. And then again, and I want to make this final point too. If you are that type of guy, right, who you have your life together, you are an attractive man, you are, you know, leveling up in all areas of your life, you learned how to be charismatic, how to be attractive to women, how to keep that polarity. Understand that not every woman is going to be right for you, right? And there's going to be times where, you know, that's another thing too. Like even on your way to that journey, like there's going to be times where you're going to interact with women and it may not work out. Like you may find that this woman does not have the same values as you, or she's in a place where she's not ready for a relationship, or you know, there may be a woman who's not interested in you. Whatever the case is, that just means that that woman is not right for you. It doesn't say anything about you because you already are doing the best in yourself. You already have done so much in yourself to work on yourself and be the best version of
Yeah,
yourself.
and you know what's really important here, like you're bringing to my awareness, is like the more that you're on that path, the more you'll naturally know that, realize that.
Yeah.
So if you're really trying to like please all the women and well, hope they like me or don't like me, that's actually a sign you're not on your path.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're really on your path, you'll naturally have confidence in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important is to know that, you know, like there are women who will be attracted to you, who want to have a healthy relationship with you, you know, so on and so forth, right? But it's just to understand that if there is a woman who it doesn't work out with, that this says nothing about you. Like obviously there's things you can learn, and it's not to say that you can't be like you should be introspective, you should be you know, critical of yourself in certain ways. But if you're doing your best to be the best version of yourself and you're not just, you know, this guy who's just putting in the bare minimum and being nice and being the nice guy or whatever, if you're actually like trying to be the best version of yourself, and you are trying to be an attractive man, but also you're on your purpose, you're on your mission, and you have a good moral system, that just means that that woman is not right for you, right? And it has nothing to do with you. Don't take it personally. Just move on, continue to be the best version of yourself, right? And don't like a lot of guys, they take a lot of these things personally, right? And I think
I had a teacher, and he said, a relationship guy that I was tuning into. He said he's actually works with, like, I just want to clarify, he works with like nonviolent communication and a lot of really conscious communication, everything. Anyway, he said no means next. Good kind of way to sum it up, you
yeah,
know?
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, no means next. I think yeah, it's like, and I think you actually were the first one to tell me this, but like if a woman is not like, if it doesn't work out with a woman, it just means you don't resonate with her. There's something there that doesn't resonate. So you have to find the woman who does resonate with you, a woman who you can have that healthy relationship with, a woman where you can develop a deeper connection with. And if you find a woman who's like that and you also have that interest in her, then that's something you can dive deeper into, right? But it's, again, it's like there's women who are going to resonate with you and there's ones who aren't. And that's just part of the human experience, right? That's just part. It's not even just with dating, it's also with friendship, it's with the job you have. Like there's just certain things in your life where you know, it might not always be something you do. Like maybe they have a personal thing, maybe this job or something, they don't want people with your background or whatever. But again, it doesn't have to do with you
Don't
always.
take it personally.
Yeah, exactly. Don't take it personally. And again, focus, like the most important thing is to focus on the being the best version of yourself. And if you can do that, then your life will unfold naturally and in a progression that aligns
Amen.
with your highest good.
Amen.
So
So, if you are young man in Gen Z, young woman in Gen Z, or you are connected to someone in Gen Z and you'd like to give us some feedback, please feel free to share. If you'd like support on any of the issues that we've discussed and talked about, any of the themes we've talked about, um, let us know, and we'll give you some ways to plug in and give you some ways to get support on some things that we're actively doing. Love you, G.
all right, love you too, Dad. And we'll see what next chapters unfold.
Thanks, everybody. Just got to find the record button. Hold on.